Hello everyone and welcome back. We'll continue our discussion on the exercises that we have on strings and lists. Let's move to question number 3. So here's the instruction for the question. We have a list here and it says write a function that will remove the first two elements and the last two elements from the list above. Also write a function that will remove the first two elements and the last element. So from our list we need to write a function that will remove these two elements and the last two elements and return the remaining elements. So we want our function to return this highlighted elements. Okay, let's see how we can do that. Okay, we'll start with our def statement. Then let's call our function remove, and it accepts a list X as an attribute. Okay. The simplest way to write this function is to include and make use of list slicing. So we can slice the list from index 2 up to -2. If you remember list slicing, if we have a list object, let's say list X, if it contains the elements, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, we can slice our list. We can say list X, and then let's say slice 0 up to 3. What will that give us? This means indexes 0 up to 3, but not including 3. So this is index 0, 1, and 2. So this will give us a list containing the elements 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3. Similarly, if we say, let's say, index 2 onwards, we get 3, 4, 5, and 6. So this is index 0, 1, 2. Right? Index 2 onwards. So using the same reasoning, we said here X, so return X from index 2 to index -2. If we consider this list, negative indexing starts from the int, so 6 will be -1 and the index of 5 will be -2. So up to -2 means not including the last element, right? Slicing doesn't include the last element. So if we take this list, this function will return elements starting from index 2. So this is the index 0, 1, and 2, and return the elements 3 and 4. So that takes care of removing the first two elements and the last two elements. So we can simply say return X slicing from 2 to -2. Now we can call our function. We can call our remove function, and then it accepts one element, one attribute. So we'll pass a list. So in this case, it should return a list containing the elements 3 and 4. 3 and 4, great. Now we can pass our longer list object here. Command C, Then we can call our remove function and pass the list. So this should return a list containing the elements, the highlighted elements. Let's run it. Yep, from 8 through 4. And we could have saved this in a variable also. Let's say y is equal to our list, and then call our function and then pass the object y. So that's the same thing. Great. Next, let's look at the next question. Question number 4. Okay. Here we have a list. It says write a function that will return the sum by calculating the elements before it. Example, it says the sum element at index 2 will be the cumulative sum of the first 3 elements, and so on. Okay, so this is the same as saying we're not only returning the sum, but the sum has to be equal to the sum of the elements before it. So the result should look like this: 1, and then 3, I'll explain later, and then 6, and it goes on like that. So the first element is 1, so we have 1 here, and the second sum here, 3, is equal to the sum of the first 2 numbers, which is 3, and the third element, 6, is equal to the sum of the first 3 elements, right? And then the fourth element here in our sum should be equal to the sum of the first 4 elements. In this case, 4 plus 3, 7 plus 2, 9 plus 1, 10. 10. And then the fifth sum here should be equal to the sum of the first 5 numbers. So 10 plus 5, that should be 16. And the last element for our sum should be equal to the sum of all these numbers, which is 22, I think, right? 6 plus 5 is 11, plus 4, 15, plus 3, 18, plus 2, 20, plus 1 should be 21, and this is 15, not 16. Cool. So the function should do this, right? So for the first element, cumulative sum is 1. For the second element here, for the second sum, it should be the sum of the first 2 elements, 3, and then the next element should be the sum of the first 3 elements, and then the sum of the first 4 elements. So basically you will be adding, let's say the first sum is 1, right? And then we will be adding the next element to your previous sum, and then you add the next element to your previous sum. So let's say up to here is what? 10, right? And you add 5 to the previous sum, and you get 15. So that should give you an idea, right? You can start with a variable to hold your total sum and set it to 0, and you can create an empty list to hold the initial sum, and we can use a for loop to keep adding or appending to that empty list, and then we'll build that empty list by adding the sum amount. Okay, that should give you an idea. Take a moment and try the exercise. Great, let's look at the solution together. We'll start with our def statement and give a name to our function. Let's call it summation, and then it will accept an attribute x, which will be our list. And then let's say we have a variable called total, and we'll set it to 0, and we'll keep adding total to the previous total. Okay, and we'll create another list object to hold the total. Let's call it result. We'll start out with an empty list, and we'll append the total that we get to this empty list. Now we can use our for loop. We can say for numbers, right? In our list object X, we can say total is equal to total plus number, right? So we can say total plus equal number. So initially total will be equal to 0 plus the first number, which is 1. So in the first for loop, the total will be 1. And then we'll take 1 and then append it to our result list. So we can say result dot append total. Simple, right? And then next, in the next for loop run, so in the first run we'll have 1. In the second run, so the total will be here for number in X. In the second run, the number is 3, right? So total, no, here the number is 2, sorry. The second number is 2. So the total will be equal to the previous total, which is 1 plus the number 2. That will be 3. And then it will append it to our result list here. So 2 plus 1 is what? Will be 3. And during the third run, the third number is what? 3, right? So for number in X, num in this case is 3. Total is equal to the previous total, which is 3, plus our third number, 3. So this will be 3 plus 3. 3 plus 3. And then it will append the result to our list here. So it will be 6 here. And then, so the for loop will continue. For num in X, the next number is 4, right? Total is equal to total plus the number. The previous total is 6 plus our number, which is 4. 6 plus 4 is 10. And then append 10 to our result list. So it will append 10, and it goes on like that to the remaining elements in our list. And finally, once we have our for loop, all we have to do is return the result. Return result, right? The final result where all the total is appended. Okay, now that we have this, we can call our function and pass the list we have here. Let's run this cell, then call our summation function and pass the list. Run it, and we get, as expected, 1, 3, 6, 10, 15, and 21. We can try it out. We can try out other lists also. Let's say summation. We can pass, let's say 3, 6, 8, and 12. So that should give us, the first sum should be what? 3. Then the second one should be 3 plus 6, which is 9. And then 9 plus 8, 17. And finally 17 plus 12, 29. So this should be the result. Yep, 3, 9, 17, and 29. Great. Let's look at the last question. question number 5. Okay, let me copy it and paste it here. It says, write a function that checks if a given list has the same duplicate elements. If so, the function should return true, or else it should return false. So let's say we have a list containing the elements 2, 3, 4, and 5. So if our list has the same duplicate elements, the function will return true. If not, it will return false. Since we don't have any duplicate elements in this list, this will return false. Whereas if we have another list that has duplicate elements, let's say 4, 4, and 3, this will return true because it has the same duplicate elements, which is 4 in this case. Okay, let's look at the solution together. We have our def statement, and let's name our function duplicate, and it will accept a list object, right? Let's call it list1. It will accept a list as an attribute. So the first thing we can do is we can sort out our list. That will make it much easier. So we'll take the list1 object that we pass as a parameter and then sort it. So we'll sort our list object, and then let's save that sorted object in a variable called x. Okay, the next thing we can do is we can use a for loop and try to check every element in our list, and then we'll compare. For instance, let's say we have this, right? We will compare the element at the first index to the element at the next index. So we'll compare two adjacent elements, and if the comparison is equal, that means duplicate elements exist and the function will return true. So if the comparison returns false, we'll compare the next adjacent elements. So first we'll compare these two, and then we'll compare the next two adjacent elements, and then we'll compare 4 and 5 and so on. Okay, let's do that. So we can say for element in, let's use a range function, in a range, and then length of our list x, which is sorted, minus 1. Don't forget we are using range. Range goes from 0 to the last element is not included. So we said length of x minus 1. In this example, the length is 4. So 4 minus 1 is 3. So range to 3, right? And then indexing will be 0, 1, 2, 3. That's why I said length of our sorted list minus 1. Okay, and then we'll compare two adjacent elements. We can say if our list x at index of the element, right? So it will be the first element. We'll use double equal because we are comparing right and left. We are comparing to see if those two are equal. So if x at the first index, if the element at the first index is equal to the element at the next index, which is element plus 1, right? This is the next index. If the comparison is equal, our function will return true. If not, we'll return false, right? Return false. So if this is true, we will return true, or else return false. So let's go through it one more time. Our duplicate function accepts one parameter. It accepts a list object. We start out by sorting our list, and once it's sorted, we use a for loop to go through each element in our list. So for element in range length of our list -1, so for elements in our list, basically, if our list at that element, so index, if the element at that index, so the first element, if the element at index 0, right, that will equal to the element at the next index. So it will compare 2 and 3. If it's true, our function will return, this for loop will return true, and it will do that for each of the elements. Otherwise, the function will return false. Okay, let's check our function. Let's call it, and then pass a list containing, let's pass this list containing the elements 2, 3, 4, and 5. 2, 3, 4, and 5. So this should return false because there are no duplicate same elements. Run it. Here it says object of type non-type has no length. Okay, let's solve this. I have one solution. Let's start out. Let's first convert the attribute that we pass here into a list. That should take care of the error. So we can say list and then the attribute that we pass. So list1, we'll cast it to a list. So that will convert it into a list. And then we can save that in a variable called, let's say, x. And once it's converted into a list, we can sort our list. So we can say x dot sort. So that should take care of the error. Let's run it again and call our function. Good. So here we have false because there are no duplicates. And next, let's call our duplicate functions, our duplicate function, and pass the next list, which is 4, 4, and 3. 4, 4, and 3. This will return true because there are duplicates. True, right? Similarly, if we pass, let's say, a list containing the elements A, C, D, that should return false. Whereas if we add one more element C, this will return true, right? And one more thing, since we are casting our attribute, whatever we pass into a list, we can even pass strings in this case. So duplicate, we can pass a string object and it will be converted to a list. So this will return false because there are no duplicates. Whereas if we say string and then let's say R and run it, we get true because R is a duplicate, right? Great. So these are the exercises that I have for this lecture, and this is just one solution. You could have written different functions to solve these problems. This is just one solution, and there are multiple ways of solving all these problems. Okay, so the solutions that I showed you are just one solution. Okay, thank you everyone, and I'll see you at the next lecture.